When I was a kid, it was common for parents to say close the curtains when it gets dark. I remember my mother often scolding me to close the curtains. I thought it was because the inside of the room was clearly visible from outside when it was lit. Well, logically speaking, that's the only reason to close the curtains, right? As I entered adolescence, self-awareness began to develop, and I started closing the curtains on my own as a matter of course. However, I later learned that the reason my mother, who originally had psychic abilities, advised me to close the curtains was different from my understanding. Perhaps due to the psychic abilities I inherited from my mother, I often had an intuition that there was something there, even though I didn't see ghosts. My mother understood that I had such abilities. It seemed that my mother from a young age used to see something through the window at night, and her admonition to me to close the curtains was a warning to prevent me from seeing something I shouldn't. This is a story from the time when I graduated from college, got a job, became independent from my parents, and started living alone in an apartment. The company I joined was an exploitative company, and there were days when I was forced to work overtime to the point where I couldn't catch the last train several times a month. One day, I was the only one left in the office working overtime. I had forgotten to close the blinds, which I usually did by the time it was around 8 o'clock at night, and I was engrossed in my work. Suddenly, as I stood up to close the blinds after noticing that the window was uncovered, my body froze, and I couldn't move. Outside of the window, there was a middle-aged man with a completely white face peering in at me. It was really bizarre. In addition to the oddity of the man's appearance lacking vitality, the location where he was standing was also peculiar. The office was located on the 8th floor of the building. There was no balcony outside of the window. There were no protruding structures, just a vertical wall with a window. In short, the man was floating in the air. The man looked at me through the window, grinning widely. I couldn't help but shout in excitement. I yanked the blinds cord with all my might, causing the blinds to come loose from the window. The excitement didn't subside, and I grabbed a nearby company fixture and hurled it at the window, shattering it. The man who saw everything twisted his pale face and burst into loud laughter in his face. In the next moment, I heard a voice in my head, silent yet resonant, saying, "Hey, come over here." I approached the window where the man was, trembling with fear. This man seemed pale, and in some places almost translucent. I couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't a living human being. The man started talking to me as if engaging in casual conversation. Despite my inner apprehension, I feigned calmness and played the role of the listener.
"You know, I actually killed myself. Back when I was alive, I ran a business, but it went under due to a recession. Besides the debt I incurred from the company, I had borrowed a significant amount personally just to keep things afloat. We were talking hundreds of millions. I was completely concerned with no hope for the future, just to sheer disappear. On the day the company went bankrupt, I drove out to the mountains, headed for a bridge over a river in a ravine. Must have been several hundred meters deep. I threw myself off trying to end it all. Looking back now, that's when things got really tough. In reality, I did die. But I couldn't stay dead. Well, saying couldn't die might not be quite right. Physically, I was dead, but my consciousness lingered as a soul. See, back then I thought dying meant my existence would just vanish, so I didn't realize I had become a soul with no physical form. I took my own life about 10 years ago, and it was only recently that I realized I had committed suicide. So, for about a decade, I've been stuck in this loop of throwing myself off that bridge into the ravine. The moment I hit the bottom of the ravine, I'd be automatically returned to the bridge, only to fall off again. This circle has been going on for 10 years. Recently, I've come to realize the fact that I'm dead and have been released from the loop wandering in this world. Even when passing through bustling downtown streets, I always felt a sense of loneliness, as if my existence was being denied. Along the way, I often see others who have become spiritual beings like myself. I hesitate to approach them, but to be honest, they have pale skin and translucent bodies. and they're just too frightening to get close to, so I end up running away when I see them. That's why I'm always alone. I haven't been greeted from the afterlife, and it's lonely, so I find myself often watching the lively gatherings from the window to distract myself from the loneliness. I was picking at you working late because back when I was running a company, I liked watching my subordinates work so diligently. You may have complaints about your boss, though. Seeing them work so hard was incredibly nostalgic for me. I couldn't help but take a peek. I'm so sorry about that. I have one piece of advice. No matter how tough things get, never choose suicide. There's no hardship that pushes you to the brink of mental agony like suicide does. The suffering of repeatedly attempting suicide until you realize you're dead, the profound loneliness where no one pays you any attention, and the deep regret of ending your life with your own hands. All of this hits you once the shackles of the physical body are removed, and your experience this unbearable despair. The penalty for suicide feels like subjecting oneself to various negative emotions. I have a feeling that unless you repent, you'll remain in this desolate realm for eternity. As long as you're alive, there are countless options. If things ever get unbearably tough, just escape. But never under any circumstances choose suicide. I can already feel my vision darkening. I think I'm about to descend into hell. Even so, don't ever consider suicide as an option, no matter if life disappoints you. Farewell. Bye.
He said this, and in the instant I looked away, the man had disappeared from before my eyes. I had absolutely no intention of committing suicide. I was just listening absent-mindedly. But for some reason I felt compelled to share this story with someone, which is why I'm telling it now. By the way, I patched up the broken window glass with cardboard after the incident at the company. The next day, I claimed I wasn't feeling well and took the day off. My boss has been calling non-stop since a while ago, but I haven't answered yet. I know there's no way to escape, but just like the man said, I'm thinking of finding a way out. Oh, by the way, since that incident, I decided not to close the curtains at night. Ghosts may be frightening, but I feel like I can learn some life lessons from them.